Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I was scrolling through Twitter the other day, or X, whatever we're calling it this week, and I stumbled onto this thread from a young writer that actually, it really made me stop scrolling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't a promo for their book, and it wasn't a celebration. It was a confession. They were practically begging for permission. They wrote, I work 10 hours a day. I have 2 kids under 5. I want to write a novel, but I haven't read a book in 6 months. Am I a fraud?
Oh, wow. That hits home. That is the raw nerve of the entire creativity right there.
It really is. And the responses were it was a total bloodbath in the comments. You had half the people acting like supportive cheerleaders saying, you're fine, just create. Art is freedom. And then you had the other half, the purists, quoting William Faulkner like it was a death sentence.
The famous Faulkner command. Oh, I know exactly.
Right. Read everything. Trash, classics, good and bad. It sounds so logical on the surface, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to be a chef, you have to eat. If you want to build a table, you watch a master carpenter.
Of course. It makes intuitive sense.
But we are living in a world William Faulkner couldn't have even imagined. We were just drowning in content. We have Netflix. We have narrative video games that are 100-hour epics. We have podcasts like this one. So the question we're tackling today isn't just should you read. That's way too easy.
No, that is too simple. The real question, and I think it's the one that causes all this anxiety, in an age of infinite media, is the book still the only valid apprenticeship for a writer? Or is that just, elitist gatekeeping designed to keep busy working class people out of the club?
Exactly. That is the mission today. We're doing a deep dive into the work of Diane Callahan, better known online as the quotidian writer, who has really dissected this debate with a level of nuance I haven't seen anywhere else.
She really digs it.
She does. And I have to warn you, looking through her research, the answer is going to make some people very relieved, and it's going to make other people really, really angry.
It's a messy topic, a very messy topic. We're going to look at the symphony analogy, the screenplay novel phenomenon, which I think is fascinating and explains so much about modern self-publishing. And we're going to debunk 6 massive myths about reading habits that I think hold a lot of people back.
But we have to start with that guilt you mentioned, that feeling. Why do we feel like we're sinning against art if we aren't reading 50 books?
It feels like a moral failing, doesn't it? Like you aren't a serious person if your Goodreads count isn't high enough.
Exactly. But let's play the role of the strict traditionalist. Let's look at the hard-nosed side of the argument. The people who say absolutely not, you cannot be a writer if you don't read. Callahan brings up the symphony analogy. Break this down for us, because I think most people go, well, I know what music sounds like. I can hum a tune. Why can't I write a song?
Right. And that's the trap. Humming a tune is intuitive. Writing a symphony is, it's architectural. Imagine you have a person who has never actually sat down and listened to a full concerto or a symphony. Okay. They've heard jingles in commercials. Maybe they've heard pop songs on the radio. They get the basics of melody and they decide, I'm going to write a symphony.
They know they need violins and drums. Mm-hmm. They have the general concept of orchestra. They've seen it in the movies.
Sure. They know the instruments exist, but they don't understand texture. They don't understand how the cello supports the melody in the second movement versus how it drives the rhythm in the third. They don't understand the silence between the notes or how a motif is introduced in the first minute and then inverted, 20 minutes later.
They don't get the nature.
They don't get the structure. So what they produce might be loud and it might technically be music in the sense that there is sound happening, but it lacks that architecture. It lacks the conversation that the instruments are supposed to be having with each other. It's just a bunch of instruments playing time.
So it's noise versus composition.
Precisely. Callahan's point here is that writing is an art form with thousands of years of architectural development. There are structures to sentences, to paragraphs, chapters. If you haven't absorbed those structures by listening to the music of other writers, you are just hitting.
So when a non-reader tries to write a novel, what is the literary equivalent of that bad symphony? What does it actually look like on the page? What are the telltale signs?
It usually manifests in pacing and tone first. That's the first thing to go. You'll see a writer who has a really great idea, maybe a cool sci-fi concept or a fantasy world, but they blow through the climax in 2 pages because they don't know how to build tension. They haven't felt it build in.
They just rush to the good part.
They rush to the good part. Or they write a dialogue scene that feels purely functional, like 2 robots just exchanging information, rather than a conversation that has subtext and rhythm and, pause. They haven't heard enough good writing to know how to mimic the music of humans.
That connects directly to the other analogies, which I found kind of brutal. The restaurateur concept.
It is brutal, but it's fair. It's the person who says, I love eating, therefore I should open a...
Right. I have great taste, so I can be a chef.
Right.
I mean, I love eating. I consider myself a professional eater.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't dare try to run a kitchen.
Exactly. But why? Why wouldn't you?
Because I don't know the first thing about ordering supplies or managing staff or the science of cooking.
Exactly. Because having taste, knowing what is good, is not the same as knowing how to make. You might know that a souffle is delicious. You might know exactly what the texture should be. But if you've never studied the chemistry of egg whites and heat or the timing of the oven, your souffle is going to collapse every single time.
And in writing, that collapse looks like what?
It looks like plot holes. It looks like characters who change their motivation halfway through the book for no reason because the author didn't know how to properly set up the arc. You have the desire to serve the meal, you have a great idea for the menu, but you lack the actual toolkit to cook it.
And the third one, which I think is maybe the most stinging because it attacks the ego, is the conversation analogy.
This one is a real reality check, especially for the arrogance of the creator, you know. It posits that literature is a conversation that has been going on for centuries.
Since Homer, since Gilgamesh even.
Exactly. Writers are constantly talking to other writers across time. They are referencing tropes, they are subverting expectations, they're building on themes that others have laid down. So writing without reading is essentially talking without.
That frames it as rude.
It is, in a way. It's walking into a room where a deep, complex debate is happening, a debate that's been going on for hours, and just shouting your opinion without knowing what anyone else has said.
Right. You might say something that was already debunked 5 minutes ago.
Or you might say something that everyone else considers a cliche, a tired old argument. It's a desire to have your voice heard without respecting the work that others have done before.
And speaking of respect, or maybe the lack thereof, that leads us directly to the bad cop of writing it, Stephen King.
Oh, King. He does not mince words in his memoir on writing, does he?
Not at all. It's practically the Bible for many writers, but he can be really hard. He basically says flat out, if you don't have the time to read, you don't have the time or the tools to.
He's drawing a very hard line in this. And there is this great anecdote in the source material about the steak dinner.
Yes, tell us about the bet. It's perfect.
Callahan mentions that if she had a nickel for every single person who told her they wanted to be a writer but didn't have time to read, she could buy herself a very, very nice.
It's the most common refrain in the world, right? I have this great idea for a book. I'm going to write it. Oh, read. No, I'm too busy to read. I have a job. I have a life.
It highlights this massive contradiction in how we view the craft. We treat writing as this magical output that we want to perform, but we treat reading as a chore we don't have time for. But King's point, and the point of this whole no camp, is that reading isn't just for entertainment. It's the acquisition of tools.
Let's talk about that tools concept.
Yeah.
Because I think people hear tools and they think, oh, I need a laptop and spell check. But what does King actually mean by tools?
He means the mechanics of the language itself. Vocabulary is, if you don't read widely, your vocabulary will be small. That's a fact. Grammar is a tool. If you don't see complex sentences in action, you won't know how to build them yourself. You are trying to build a house, but your only tool is a hammer.
And everything looks like a nail.
Everything looks like a nail. You don't have a saw, you don't have a level, you don't have a screwdriver. You can try to build that house, and you might even get 4 walls up, but it's going to be crooked, and it's probably going to fall down in the first.
So that's the hard truth. That's the eat your vegetables side of the argument. If you don't read, you are technically unequipped, and you're probably being a bit arrogant about it. But we promise nuance. And I want to push back on this because that sounds incredibly discouraging to someone who legitimately struggles with reading, like the person in that.
It is discouraging, and it borders on ableism, really does. So we have to pivot. We have to look at the yes side, the inclusive reality.
Right, because the source material really emphasizes that this isn't about gatekeeping. It's not about saying you aren't allowed to write. Diane Callahan makes a strong point that writing is a fundamental form of self-expression.
It belongs to everyone. It doesn't just belong to the scholars and the bookworms in their ivory tower. If you want to write a poem about your heartbreak, you don't need to have read to have a heart.
And we have to acknowledge that there are very valid, very real barriers to reading. It's not always just laziness or I'd rather play Call of Duty.
Absolutely not. And parenting is a huge one. We touched on it in the intro. If you have toddlers running around, your brain is just fried by the end of the day. You might have 30 minutes of silence, and in that 30 minutes, you have to make a choice. Do I try to create something of my own, or do I consume something someone else?
And in that context, choosing to write is actually a victory. You are choosing creation over consumption, and that should be celebrated.
It is a huge win. Then there are the mental ops like dyslexia. For some people, the act of reading is physically and mentally exhausting. It drains their battery. So if they spend their limited energy reading a chapter of a book, they have nothing left in the tank for their...
That's a really crucial point. We can't judge everyone by the same neurotypical standard. If reading takes 100% of your focus and energy, you can't treat it as a relaxing way to learn. It's work, hard work.
It is work. So if we accept that writing is valid for everyone and that there are real barriers. How do we reconcile that with the symphony now?
Yeah.
How do we reconcile you need tools with I don't have the capacity to get them that way?
This is where Callahan introduces this "you are what you eat" nuance, which I thought was really clever. The saying goes, you are what you eat, right?
Right. It's a clack. But she points out a fundamental flaw in that logic. If you eat a Michelin star meal, you don't become a Michelin star chef.
You just come out full.
You just become full and maybe a little poorer.
Unfortunately true.
Just consuming the food doesn't teach you how to cook. It gives you a standard, a goal to aim for, but it doesn't meet. And conversely, reading isn't the only component of a good writer. It's just one pillar of the craft.
Okay, so what are the other pillars? If reading is one leg of the stool, what holds up the rest?
Practice is a huge one, a massive. You can read 1,000 books on literary theory, you can analyze every classic ever, but if you never actually write a sentence, you are not a writer, you're a critic. You learn by doing. You learn by failing on the page and then figuring out why it failed.
Fair. You can study swimming theory all day, but eventually you have to get in the water.
Exactly. Then there is imagination, that raw creative spark. You can be incredibly well-read, but have zero imagination, and your writing will be technically perfect, but dry and boring and utterly forgettable.
And someone who's never read a book might have a wild, vivid, incredible imagination that's just bursting with story.
And the third pillar is attention to. This comes from living life, not from book. It's about observing how people really talk, not how they talk in novels. It's about noticing how the light hits a building at dusk or how grief actually feels in your stomach. That comes from experience.
So reading provides the technical framework, but life and practice and imagination provide the substance.
That's a great way to put it. Reading gives you the blueprint, but you have to supply the building materials from your own life.
But let's not let the non-readers off the hook entirely just yet, because there are specific technical things, really specific nitty-gritty mechanics that you simply cannot learn from life or from watching Netflix.
No, you can't.
This brings us to a really specific phenomenon that Callahan identifies, and once I read about this, I swear I started seeing it everywhere. The screenplay novel.
Oh, this is the hallmark of the modern Wattpad generation.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as an insult at all. It's just a symptom of our media consumption habits. These are writers who consume mostly visual media. Anime, Netflix, movie talk.
So they're consuming story, lots of story, but they're consuming it visual.
Correct. So when they sit down to write prose, they are essentially transcribing a movie that is playing in their head. They don't realize that books and movies operate on completely different operatings. They're trying to run a Mac program on a Windows PC.
Give me a concrete example. If I pick up a book, how do I know I'm reading a screenplay novel? What does that look like on the page?
Okay, picture a simple scene where a character is angry. A screenplay writer will focus entirely on the external action, the blocking. They might write something like, John walked into the room, he slammed the door, he looked at Mary, he frowned, he yelled, "Why did you do that?"
It's very step by step.
Yeah.
He did this, then he did that. Very factual.
It's camera directions. It's a shot list. He looked here, he walked there. It's flat. It assumes the reader can see the actor's face and infer the emotion from the frown. Now, a writer who understands the unique power of interiority in a novel would write that completely differently.
How so?
They wouldn't just tell you John frowned, they would take you inside his head. They might say, the air in the room felt suddenly too thin for John to breathe. He looked at Mary, and the apology already forming on her face only made the bile rise faster in his throat.
See, that is a totally different experience. I'm not watching. I am John. I'm inside his body now. I'm feeling the physical sensation of the anger, not just observing a guy frown from a distance.
That is the superpower of prose. Movies can't do that. Movies can only show you the frown. Books can show you the reason for the frown, the feeling behind it. If you don't read books, you don't learn how to use that tool. You leave your best weapon on the table and you try to compete with Netflix using only visual description, and you will lose that battle every single time.
That makes so much sense. You're trying to be a camera instead of being a narrator. And don't even get me started on dialogue tags and punctuation.
The dialogue formatting, it seems so petty, doesn't it? So prescriptive.
It does. Who cares if the comma is inside or outside the quotation mark? Who cares if I capitalize PSE? He feels like busy work.
Your reader's brain cares. That's the thing. Readers have been trained by millions and millions of words to recognize a specific visual pattern for dialogue. It's like driving on a road. You don't consciously think about the lane markers until they disappear or suddenly change color.
And when they do, you swerve.
You swerve. When you break the pattern, when you use a period instead of a comma before the tag, or you capitalize the wrong word, it acts like a speed. It jolts the reader out of the dream of...
It screams amateur.
Completely. It tells the reader, the person driving this car doesn't know the rules of the road, and you can't learn dialogue formatting from watching a movie or listening to an audio. You can only learn it by seeing it on the page over and over and over again until it becomes muscle memory.
That's a really practical point. It's not about being a snob. It's about not distracting your reader with technical error. If you want to be taken seriously, you have to get the punctuation right. And reading is the easiest, most passive way to learn.
And then there's the more strategic side of it, which is market intelligence.
This sounds very business.
It is, because writing is art, but publishing is... If you don't read in your genre, you don't know the market, you don't know what's already out there, you have no idea what readers are actually buying.
So you might write a book that you think is totally original and groundbreaking.
And you realize it's been done 1,000 times before. You might think, I'm going to write a book about a wizard school, and not realize you have a massive, massive shadow to climb out from under. Or you might be writing a young adult novel, but using a tone and style that is completely wrong for that age group because you haven't read any YA published in the last...
You're flying blind. You're trying to sell a product without ever having stepped inside the store to see what's on the shelves.
Exactly. You need to know the cliches so you can avoid them, or even better, so you can twist them in an interesting way. You need to know the reader's expectations so you can subvert them. That's how you stand out.
So we've established that books teach you the deep mechanic, the interiority, the formatting, the market. But there was a really interesting counterpoint in the source material about learning via osmosis, the idea that you can learn story structure without ever opening a book.
Yes, and I love this part of the argument because it validates the modern storyteller. Storytelling is ancient. It predates the novel by thousands. It's fundamental to being.
We were telling stories around campfires long before the printing press. We were painting stories on paved walls.
Oral storytelling is a valid and powerful. Today, we have intuitive story structure embedded in all the other media. It's in movies, it's in TV shows, it's definitely in video.
A good video game has a perfect narrative arc. A good movie has that classic 3-act structure.
Right. So if you watch Star Wars or play The Last of Us, you are absorbing the rhythm of a story. You learn that there needs to be an inciting incident. You learn that the middle part, the second act, usually gets harder for the hero. You learn that the climax needs to resolve the core themes.
You develop an intuition for it. You can feel when a movie is dragging, right?
Yeah.
You look at your watch and go, okay, we're in the second act slump. Something needs that.
Exactly. You learn that through osmosis, even if you aren't reading text. So a non-reader can absolutely understand structure. They just might struggle with the execution of that structure in prose form.
Callahan mentions this remix culture. I think this is so relevant today with how interconnected everything is.
It is. The best artists have always been, they combine elements from different sources. You might take a visual aesthetic from a cyberpunk anime, that neon, rainy, high-tech, low-life vibe, and try to translate that feeling into a written description.
Or you might take a character archetype from a TV show like The Sopranos, the sympathetic villain, and place them in a high fantasy setting. That sounds interesting already.
That cross-pollination is where innovation happens. If you only read books in one genre, you might just write books that sound like other books in that genre. But if you bring in influences from music or art or history...
You create something fresh and unexpected. But there is a trap, of course.
Always a trap.
The trap of the infinite library.
That sounds like a Doctor Who episode title.
It really does.
The trap is the danger of spending your whole life reading or consuming media instead of living.
The recluse writer, the person who lives in the library but never steps outside into the sun.
Right. You can get so caught up in the research and the input and filling the well that you forget to go out and get the raw material. Real-life relation, heartbreak, boring job, travel, argument.
Callahan has this great line, life experiences can be far more useful than an infinite library of fiction.
Because that's where the authenticity comes from. If you want to write a three-dimensional character, you need to have met complex, contradictory people in real life. If you want to write authentic conflict, you need to have argued with someone you love and felt that knot in your stomach.
If you only get your ideas about conflict from movies, your writing will feel like a movie script of a conflict. It will feel staged. But if you pull from that fight you had with your partner last week...
That's visceral. That's real. That's the stuff readers connect. So while reading provides the structure, life provides the soul of the story.
Okay. Let's get into the therapy session part of this deep dive, because I think so much of the I don't read enough anxiety is based on these arbitrary rules we've set for ourselves. Callahan identifies 6 myths that we need to smash right now.
Let's do it. Let's bust some myths.
Myth number 1, the quantity trap. I must read 100 books a year to be a real writer.
Oh, the Goodreads challenge. Such a double-edged sword.
It gamifies reading, which can be fun, but it also creates immense pressure.
It creates a magic threshold. Like, if I read 99 books, I'm a failure, but if I read 100, suddenly I'm a real writer. It's absurd. Callahan quotes Mortimer J. Adler here, and it's brilliant. In the case of good books, the point is not to see how many of them you can get through, but rather how many can get through to you.
That's deep. How many can get through to you? That reframes everything.
It's quality over quantity. A person who reads 5 books a year but reads them deliberately analyzing the sentences, thinking about the structure, letting it change how they see the world. That person learns infinitely more than a speed reader who just blasts through 100 books to hit a number on a website.
And the number creates bad incentives. You start avoiding long books.
Yeah.
You don't want to pick up an epic fantasy.
Right. You avoid War and Peace or The Way of Kings because it counts as one book but takes a month to read. So you pick up 10 short novellas instead just to pad your stats.
Callahan suggests shifting the metric entirely. Don't count books. If you have to count something, count pages, or count hours spent reading.
Or just ignore the count entirely and focus on the learning and the enjoyment. What a concept.
This leads us directly to myth number 2, which I think is the most dangerous one for aspiring writers. The obsession with speed reading. I must learn to speed read.
This is such a cultural obsession. We want to hack everything. We want to optimize everything. It's that CEO mindset. I read a book a day to optimize my work.
But for a writer, is that actually good?
No, it is actually counterproductive. It's the worst thing.
Why is that? Why is it so bad?
Because of the muscle analogy. Reading is a must. Speed will come naturally with practice. You don't need to force it. But more importantly, Francine Prose, great name.
It's a perfect name.
She points out that language is a medium, just like musical notes or paint. You need to read slowly to hear them. You need to linger on a brushstroke to understand the technique. If you speed read, you are just skimming for information. You are getting the plot, but you are missing the craft.
You're stripping the meat off the bone and just looking for the skeleton. You're not tasting the meal.
Exactly. Think about it like a mechanic. If a mechanic drives a car at 100 miles per hour, they know the car works. That's the plot.
Oh.
But if they want to understand how to build the engine, they have to stop the car, pop the hood, and look at the parts one by one.
So a writer needs to read slowly.
Painfully slowly sometimes. You need to stop at a great sentence and ask, why did that work? Why did they use the word shatter instead of break? Why did they put the adjective after the noun there instead of before? That's how you learn.
That's reading as a producer, not just a
Precisely. If you are just consuming for the plot, you are a fan. If you are analyzing the sentence structure, you are an apprentice. And you cannot analyze sentence structure at 500. It's impossible.
Myth number 3, the fun factor. Reading is always easy and fun.
This is a big one. People think, if I'm a writer, I should love reading all the time. It should be effortless. I should always be excited to pick up a book.
And if it's hard or it's boring or it feels pretentious, they feel like they're failing. Why am I not enjoying Moby Dick? Maybe I'm not a real writer after all.
But the reality is reading can be hard work, especially if you are reading to learn. It's a huge cognitive load. You are decoding symbols, building a world in your mind, tracking characters, analyzing theme. It's a mental workout.
Callahan has a specific, very practical rule, the 20% rule.
I love this piece of advice. It's so actionable. She says the first 20% of a novel often has a learning curve. You're learning the names, the world, the author's style. It can be a real slog.
I do this all the time. I read 2 chapters, I'm confused, I put it down to pick up my...
Her advice is to power through that first 20% in one sitting if you possibly can. Just commit to getting over that initial hump. Usually, once you understand the rhythm and the rules of that world, the rest of the book flies by.
And she also suggests the sandwich myth for your reading.
Right. Alternate. Don't punish yourself. Read a dense, difficult classic. Then read a fun, trashy thriller that you can finish in a day. Then read a nonfiction book about something you're curious about. Don't try to read Ulysses and Infinite Jest back to back. You'll burn out and you'll never want to read again.
Myth number 4. This is a common fear, especially for new writers. I might accidentally plagiarize something.
The fear of influence. If I read too much of this author, I'll just start writing exactly like.
Is that a valid fear? I mean, I've definitely read a book and then found myself thinking in that author's voice for like a week.
It happens, for sure, but it's not something to fear. The reality is no writer can perfectly replicate another. It's impossible. Even if you sit down and try to write exactly like Douglas Adams or Daphne du Maurier, your own personal signature, your own voice, your own experiences, your own weird tics will break through.
You can't help but be yourself, even when you're trying to be someone.
And here's the real reassurance. All stories spring from previous. If you don't read books, you aren't being pure or original. You are just going to end up recycling movies and TV shows instead.
Right, you're recycling something no matter what. You might as well recycle the best literature instead of the latest sitcom.
Exact. Embrace the take what you love from other writers and mix it into your own stew. Recycling and building upon old ideas is the essence of art. It's how genre evolves.
Yes, number 5, the completionist guilt. I must finish every book I start.
Life is too short for bad. It's too short.
Amen to that.
Callahan gives us all permission to quit. It is okay to... She mentions this idea from Hannah Greendale, the book buffet approach.
I like the sound of that.
Treat a bookstore or a library like a buffet. You don't have to eat every. Sample the openings of several novels. Read the first page of 5 different... Does one of them tickle your taste buds? Does it grab... If yes, keep eating. If no, put it back and try something.
You wouldn't force yourself to eat a whole plate of food you hate just because you took one bite of it.
Precisely. Your hobby should be a source of comfort and joy, not guilt and obligation. Find the books that enrich your life, not the ones you think you're...
And finally, myth number 6, the big one, the one that started this whole conversation. I don't have time.
This is the harsh truth part. We prioritize.
We do. We say we don't have time, but we have time to scroll Instagram for an hour. We have time to play video games for 3 hours. We have time to watch this deep dive.
The steak dinner comes back to haunt us. The advice here is simple and effective. 30-minute magic.
Just 30 minutes a day. That's it.
That's it. Don't try to go from 0 to reading 2 hours a day. You'll fail. Create a small, sustainable habit. Read while you eat lunch. Read for 15 minutes before you get out of bed in the morning. Read right before you go to sleep instead of looking at your phone, which is better for your sleep anyway.
It adds up. 30 minutes a day is, what, 3.5 hours a week? That's a book or 2 a month. Easily.
And suddenly you're not a non-reader anymore. You are a reader again. The guilt starts to fade.
Now let's get really practical before we wrap up.
Yeah.
We have to address the elephant in the room when it comes to modern reading, audiobooks.
Yeah. Let's settle the debate once and for all. The great war of our time.
Do they count?
Okay.
And be honest, does listening to a book count as reading?
Yes, they absolutely count as reading, period.
Right.
Full stop. You are consuming the story, the language, the character arcs, the structure. It is a fantastic tool for found time when you're driving, doing chores, exercising. It's a game changer.
I sense a but coming. It's a caveat, isn't there?
There is. And this is a big however, specifically for writers. Audiobooks won't help you with the visual mechanics of prose. They will not teach you punctuation. They will not teach you about paragraph break.
Because you can't hear a paragraph break.
You can't hear a paragraph break. You can't hear the difference between a semicolon and a colon or an em dash. You can't see how the dialogue is indented on the page. And those visual cues are incredibly important for controlling how a reader paces themselves and experiences the story on them. So if you only listen to audiobooks, you might still struggle with that screenplay novel formatting issue we talked about earlier.
So if I'm an audiobook addict, what should I do? Buy the physical copy too and try to read along.
Honestly, yes. Or just use the library. Listen to the book for the story, for the pure enjoyment of it. But then, and this is a great exercise for any writer, go get the physical book, open it to your favorite scene, a scene you loved listening to, and just look at it. Look at the white space. Look at the sentence length. Look at the punctuation. Compare what you heard in your head to what is physically on the paper. You'll be shocked at how different they are, and you'll learn a ton.
That's really great, actionable advice. What about short form? If a 400-page novel is just too daunting for someone, right?
Short stories are incredible for writers. They are like masterclasses in efficiency and impact. Callahan recommends literary magazines like Granta, or for genre fiction, Beneath Sealess Skies. You can often read them online.
And podcasts. There are fiction podcasts.
Yes, so many good ones. The New Yorker Fiction Podcast is a fantastic recommendation from the source. You get a host and a guest author reading a story, and then, and this is the key, they discuss it. They analyze. So you get the reading experience and the expert analysis all in one.
It's like a mini deep dive for every single story.
Exactly. And for genre fans, sci-fi, fantasy, horror, she recommends the Escape Artists Network of podcasts. They have amazing audio.
And we can't forget the free stuff. We have to mention the free stuff.
Project Gutenberg. Over 60,000 free ebooks. All the classics are out of copyright. Alice in Wonderland, Sherlock Holmes, Frankenstein. These are free. And of course, the public library.
Libraries are the writer's best friend. Seriously, use your library.
Use them. They have ebooks, audiobooks, physical books. It's all there.
So we've been through the ringer. We've looked at the guilt, the hard truths, the inclusive realities, the myth, and the practical hack. What is the final verdict?
The final verdict on the question, can you be a writer if you don't read, is yes.
Yes. A simple yes.
Yes. You can be a writer. You can express yourself. You can tell your stories. It's a fundamental human right, in a way.
But I know there's a but.
But can you be a great writer if you don't read? Probably not.
That's the distinction.
That's the line. If you want to master the craft, if you want to produce work that resonates deeply with readers and stands the test of time, you need to study the math. You need the tool. You need to understand the medium you are working in, inside and out.
The one guideline Callahan gives is this: try your best to learn from others through reading, but define success on your own terms.
That's the healthy approach. Don't let the guilt paralyze not writing at all. That's the worst possible.
I love the provocative thought she leaves us with at the end, the concept of you are enough.
It's so powerful. It asks you, the listener, to reflect. Why do you actually want to write? Is it to be famous? Is it to be the next Stephen King? Or is it because you have something inside you that you need to say?
And if you focus on the why, then reading stops being a chore. It becomes a tool to help you say that thing more clearly, more powerfully, rather than a chore you have to complete to earn some imaginary writer badge.
Exactly. Identifying that core goal changes your entire relationship. It becomes a joy, not a job.
So to our listeners, whether you are devouring a book a day or haven't picked one up in years, you are enough. Your desire to create is valid. But maybe, just maybe, Pick up a book this week, just for 30 minutes. See what happens.
You might be surprised.
Whatever you do, keep writing. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.